I've wanted to make movies since I was introduced to the Three Stooges.
Working here in New Mexico has allowed me to be all the things I want to be.
Yeah, you know, just have some fun.
I knew that there was a state capital. I knew that there were a couple colleges here. I figured we'd be okay.
I came here on vacation a long time ago, and I like to say it's been a long vacation because I'm still here.
And it helps if you have a crystal ball, but mine's always blurry.
I do find that I'm not much interested in what's coming out of Hollywood for the most part.
I like films that have a positive spin to them.
And there was a sense of an ability to influence the future of film in New Mexico.
It's funny, now that our industry has grown to this place, I'm seeing more sharks coming in, and I would like them to swim on to other waters.
I think we sold a can of Streaks and Tips to the Avengers.
Who came to Rembrandt and says, draw something that makes me money? Come on, we're making art. Why does art have to make money?
This is show business, so it's all based on money and making money.
I usually don't take a job that is going to be something I don't like. And I can usually find something good in every job that I take.
It just gets in your blood, and you just don't want to do anything else. It's like, I want to do this again. You turn the camera off, it's like, no, turn it back on.
I guess I'd have to say my heart brought me here to New Mexico and has kept me here.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, fellow film enthusiasts and film workers. You're listening to CinemaScope, and I'm your host, Stu Goswick. We've got a great lineup today, and as always, we're going to talk about all things film here in New Mexico. I'm Stu Goswick, and I host KSFR 101.1 FM's CinemaScope here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. With films such as Thor, No Country for Old Men, True Grit, and The Avengers all being shot here in the past, you could argue that things have been looking up. And some would say nature has given New Mexico its own movie set. Huge blue skies and deep sunsets, deserts and mesas, canyons and mountains, rivers, forests, grasslands, 300 days of sunshine a year, and some of the best light in America. One thing is clear. The industry has taken a hit in recent years, and you could argue that it's only just now recovered. We've been speaking to some of the industry's leading executives, its indigenous filmmakers, and some of the very founders of New Mexico's film business to see what position we're in right now. We wanted to find out if the land of enchantment really has a future in the filmmaking arena, and more importantly, how we will get there.
I came to New Mexico originally because New Mexico was climbing up in the field of film-friendly states. New Mexico, at the time I came here, was pretty much touted as a backdoor into Hollywood.
If you want to live in a place that's really beautiful, really clean, really great people, beautiful history, beautiful culture, great food, and yet still be able to pursue a career in an industry on a high level.
If you draw well, you can do backings, if you can do storyboards, you can do whatever. Photography, telling people what to do, directing. Yeah. putting it all together, producing. If you know you're into music, obviously, fantastic.
There are many fabulous entertainers, artists, composers here in New Mexico. And I'm not just speaking about rock music or rap music. I'm speaking the entire gamut of composition and performance.
And while there's been a lot of attraction to places like Louisiana, films going there, New Mexico's going to still have a certain kind of background for locations and for weather and all that I think is still going to continue to draw people.
The light here is unlike anything else in the world. You really can't find it anywhere. From morning to even high noon into dusk, it's just absolutely fabulous.
Within 20 minutes, you can go up into the mountains and be, surrounded by trees and forest, and a little ways further than that, you could be in trees and forests that have moss hanging in the trees. And so I think we're really blessed. We have an extraordinary amount of talent and programs that are developing not only talent here in terms of above the line, but below the line.
We have some of the best crews in the business. And I would even go so far as to say I would put our crews up with anybody.
Work rules here are infinitely more flexible, so it's easier to take somebody from here than it is from other places.
We've gotten so much more since we started, where there's 2 and 3 and 4 film crews that can be working that are all equally qualified.
The benefits of getting into the film industry, well, as a gripper and electrician, is you stay in really good shape.
Another very important thing is the quality of the films being made in New Mexico is quite high. I mean, there are guys who've only worked here who have incredible resumes with amazing credits. Other people have come here from Hollywood, and you look at their credits and you don't recognize a single film on their credits. But some guy from New Mexico, I mean, he's got Academy Award-winning films and Emmy Award-winning TV series, and so it's amazing.
The Lone Ranger just finished shooting here. The Avengers shot here. Breaking Bad, one of the most successful television shows in history. So you can be involved with truly legitimate productions and still kind of get away from some of the hustle and bustle of like a really big city like Los Angeles.
It's not quite as intense as in Hollywood. I mean, I don't know. To me, it's so much better here because people are a little bit more, I don't say natural. I mean, it's more about the talent than about, who did lunch with who.
I've paid my dues. I've lived in LA. It's not pleasant. Maybe when you're, really young. But New Mexico, the land of enchantment, it really is. It's enchanting, and it's it's so easy to live here, but at the same time, you can work in the industry and follow your dreams. It's a perfect combination to me.
My goal in life was to never be a starving artist. When I found out I could make a living in the motion picture business, that's where I went.
I tell this story a lot, that, you know, I've watched a lot of people start in the business on their first films, and now they've come along and they're accomplished people, and you can really see the change in them because, you know, they have families and they're wearing nicer clothes.
When I came here, there was not the kind of film industry that there is now. There were a group of filmmakers that were around, and I just really decided to attach myself to those people and, you know, sort of apprentice to them in a way.
It's great to share your art and bring community together. It's great to meet other filmmakers and be able to share your stories. But ultimately, we're making films, so hopefully we can sell them and keep making more.
I can talk about all the things you want to do, but when it comes right down to it, movies are like any other business. It's the bottom line.
The industry is going through a rough period, and it's going, particularly the film industry. Television is good. So what's good right now, a lot of people are going into television because that's what's moving quickly.
How many industries are there out there in the world that are not going to China, that are willing to pick up wherever they are doing something and move to where you are and do that thing where you are? The film business is a business that's incredibly mobile and incredibly flexible and is able to do that.
To some extent, we're hampered a little bit by the current financial situation because it's hard for people to get credit to make bigger films.
The nature of the work is still feast or famine. You either have, I tend to either have way too much work that I can barely complete or have absolutely nothing going on. I prefer the first one, obviously.
The country is going through the world is going through an economic crisis. This trickles down in the music industry to less funds, discretionary funds that people have to use major facilities like ours.
It's always a challenge. I mean, I'm sort of sorry that I got into that part of the business. You know, it's a lot more fun to be in this part of the business because financing is, especially with the economies around the world today, it's just, you know, it's just really tough. They say that banks are lending money, but I want to know to who, because they're not. So.
The money that comes in that is not local money, that gets spent on the local economy, is imported money. We like that. The money that comes from local folks is money that kind of stays here.
And I think that the money spent in this state is new money. It's not money that is here and turned over. It's coming from outside. I think we should embrace that because it's new money into our economy. I don't think the state should lose money. I live here. I don't want it to lose money. But I think if you track how much money comes in and where the dollars are spent, it's very, very helpful to the New Mexico economy.
there are so many ancillary businesses that are attached to the film industry that people forget about. You know, dry cleaners, hotels, restaurants, clothing, lumber, carpentry, even places like, you know, the Goodwill, where people will, costumers can buy clothes from there and then return them so they get resold again. I mean, it's an extraordinary amount of business that is generated in clean industry generally around the film industry. So I feel like it's made a huge leap by having studios built here.
In Albuquerque, this is the biggest driver. When Albuquerque loses, as they just have, a superhero movie that was going to spend $250 million, $250 million in Albuquerque in the space of 6 months, that's huge. And that affects every restaurant and hotel, but it also affects home prices. It affects gross receipts tax revenues, which pays for fire protection or cops and things like that. Across the board, that affects them.
And people need to continue to realize that the money that is spent on the production filters into so many industries here that it's difficult to track. They have done studies that have said, you know, positive and negative things about the impact, but when a $150 million movie comes to town and rents hotel rooms and cars and they all go to restaurants, they buy supplies here, that has a positive impact on the community and on the economy. And I think that people need to recognize that and support it instead of trying to save money by pushing productions away that would otherwise spend money here.
I'm a native New Mexican, and I had to go to Los Angeles and New York to work for years and years. About 8 or 10 years ago, I just decided that I didn't like living in Los Angeles. I really liked living here. So I came home and I said, I don't care if I don't make money, I can live on beans, it's fine. And then the incentive happened about 5, 6 years ago, and I've worked the last 5 or 6 years more than ever.
And obviously, we were in a grace period. We were in a place where we had great support from the government.
There was no industry until there were tax incentives. There was one film a year being made, and now suddenly there's a whole docket of films, television being made here. And that's in addition to, the commercials and documentaries and other smaller projects that have always gone on here.
With the new focus that's happened in the last, I guess it's been maybe the last 8 years or so, the work has continued, it just continued to come here.
We call it Hollywood, but it's really an industry. It's like making shoes or making cars or, whatever it is. You manufacture something, you want to manufacture the best for the least price. And so when Hollywood hears that in South Africa they're giving you 40% back on your money, you go there.
I think that the film incentives have been basically a huge part of why the New Mexico film industry has thrived. And I think that if it's going to continue to thrive, we need to offer the incentives.
We were doing really well attracting film companies, and then with the change of the political scene, it pretty much scared away a lot of the Hollywood folks.
What the industry now feels that it gives so much money to wherever they go make the movies that they're not going to go to a place that doesn't do that.
When you look at Warner Brothers Studios, there's hardly been a film made there in the last 4 or 5 years. It's gone all over the country because of incentives.
Senator Tim Keller, I think, has said it really well about the tax incentives. They were necessary to get us off the ground. We're still on the map. To build all of the infrastructure, everything we now have, we needed those tax incentives. I would argue we still need them.
Every major production company now in the world has a division that all they are doing is seeing where they can get incentive money. And so we can't not do that.
Film that I'm working on now, it's a story about Albuquerque. The interiors, all the interiors are being shot in Winnipeg, Canada. That gives a 60% rebate.
Colorado has just amplified and ratified and passed a brand new film incentive program. I don't have the details of it yet, but I am told it's a pretty good one, and ostensibly at least as good as the one offered in New Mexico. What does that mean to New Mexico film industry?
Like a lot of people have already done, go to Louisiana, or, you know, I was with a friend the other day who's an actor, and he was saying, I'm going to go back to Hollywood because there's not enough happening here. I can't stay alive.
We still do well compared to a lot of markets between Los Angeles and New York, but we aren't getting nearly what Louisiana is getting right now.
In a funny way, New Mexico is one of the places that started it, you know, and so now everybody's followed it. Yeah. Now we got to be in there.
And while crew and cast may be driving up to Colorado to shoot, it's going to taper off if Colorado's program is successful. And I think it would be a travesty for as much support as has gone into the New Mexico film industry to lose it by nickel and diming it up front to a state that is starting its program and is going to hit it hard.
Our biggest challenge is making sure we keep what we got and try to get clarity in the incentives and try to have a program that works for everyone.
Film producers want to know what they're going to get, what is the playing table. You can't keep changing the rules on them. They'll just go somewhere else.
The reason people came to New Mexico, even if there were other states that had incentives that were higher than ours, was because they knew exactly what they had to do to get any money back and when it would happen.
For example, Icon, Mel Gibson's company, came out here and produced a film called Seraphim Falls, which I worked on. So Icon borrowed the whole $15 million for the production of the film so that they didn't have to use their money from their company. So they made the film with somebody else's money. They went out, sold the film, distributed the film, got their money back, and then paid the state back. So it was a way for them to do a whole production without putting any money down at all for themselves.
When Clint Eastwood was asked if he had anything that could be shot in Michigan, when Michigan was given 42%, he told his assistant, he says, yeah, didn't we have somebody hand write a screenplay about, you know, this old geezer and stuff? And the guy brought it back to him and says, yeah, Fort Torino. I mean, that movie would have never got made. All right?
The cap put everybody into a dither because they did not really know how much of that cap would be left by the time they got our and other small operations rebates processed.
I think it stifled production. They have more than enough money, in my opinion, to afford to have a much larger pool of money available for production.
We have a ton of money. We have 15 billion. That's 15 with a B, $15,000 million in the bank, sitting in a permanent fund that we can't spend. We should be investing a lot more of that money here in New Mexico and a lot more of that money into our people. We should be investing it into movies because movies have high-paying jobs attached to them.
So I think if we do that and we stay competitive, we'll be fine. But if we don't, we won't.
But fortunately, I think it's reversing itself now, and there are major pictures coming in this year, and I think you'll see more and more coming back. I don't know whether it'll ever get back to the heyday of 5 years ago, but hopefully it'll continually to get better.
I think it's very important that the governor and the legislature do not shoot themselves in the foot and ignore the financial windfall that film has brought to the state of New Mexico. And it has been a major, major windfall.
You know, I've been around this business for long enough to know that everything we talk about, you know, as I say, the great quality of light, the storytelling aspect of New Mexico, the one-day trip to LA and things like that, that's all great. But if there's no film incentives, people won't shoot here.
As a native filmmaker, our community here in New Mexico is very unique. If somebody said tonight, called me at midnight and said, hey, I need help in the morning, I'm down there and I'll go help. The same, I know I can call them and they would come and help at a moment's notice.
For me, I think what I found is to be most beneficial being in New Mexico is that it is a collaborative community. I don't think there's too many places where you can go where above the line and below the line actually know each other. And actually, you know, you bump into each other, you see each other out, you hang out together, and there's a really collaborative environment to actually make films here.
I think about 3 years ago now, a bunch of us were doing a 48-hour film. And I had never done one before, and one of the things that happened in the beginning of that process is you have to incorporate one word into your narrative of what you're going to do, and you have a half an hour to come up with ideas for stories in the genre that they give you. And I was blown away at all the cool stories that people thought of in like a half an hour. And I thought to myself, well, this is kind of silly. We have all this talent here. Why are we waiting for a competition? Why don't we just get together and do something meaningful?
We have an opportunity here to sort of reinvent a little studio approach to things in, you know, what we might kind of term kind of a micro studio. So I think any given group of people or producers can change their approach to how they do the work.
We've got everything we need here. We just need producers and directors and writers to come up with great original content that can come out of New Mexico.
I think it's important. There's so many stories here in New Mexico that, I mean, telling other people's stories, we've done that, you know, and let's try to make our own stories for a while.
We have the crews, we have everything we need to make stories happen, to make stories become reality.
There have to be indigenous filmmakers of some kind. You know, there have to be people who want to make this into a filmmaking center, like San Francisco. You know, San Francisco worked because of Francis Coppola and George Lucas were there, and they made movies that made huge amounts of money, and that's why they were able to be there. Every film that George Lucas made, Hollywood thought was the worst film that they had ever seen in their lives, and they took them away from George and they recut them. And even in mangled states, they were hugely successful. If we just had one George Lucas here, one person with some sort of vision who could do something like that, that might help us begin to establish ourselves as our own production center.
I think the municipal governments, state governments can be helpful if they would just see that we have so much talent right here in our state. And, I'd like them to back off of the whole big Hollywood concept and think more about how can we make it more of a homegrown, make our own Hollywood. I mean, we have the infrastructure, so we just need to recognize that we have the talented people here that can produce, direct, shoot, write.
We sort of have that with Breaking Bad, in a sense. There's a show that's located in Albuquerque. The location is Albuquerque. The guy writes the series for Albuquerque. We need that kind of thing.
I think that right now we have vertical infrastructure, so we can definitely make films here. The question now is, can we finance films? And I think that's really the only factor that holds New Mexico back, is really finding a vertically integrated model, just like the one that used to exist in Hollywood.
Which basically makes a whole bunch of pictures and rely on one of them making money to cover the cost of everything else. You're making a big mistake.
New York and Texas, California, Louisiana, there's a lot of capital in those states that end up actually financing pictures. I think in New Mexico it's a little bit more challenging, just because it's not necessarily a state that is known for its opulence and wealth. That being said, though, it's a very resourceful place.
I think deals are always going to be made in Los Angeles, but ideas come from somewhere else. And I hope New Mexico becomes that.
This is a place where everybody sort of works together and cheers each other on, supports each other. It's like kind of a giant family. It's nice.
It's tough because you walk this fine line between competition and cooperation with other filmmakers. And so where you can come up with combinations of people that can work together and move that along, it's going to be their own initiative that's going to help things, and it's not going to come from miraculously from outside.
Somebody's got to come along with that original idea, and understand all these different factors and put it into action.
It's a place where you can think outside the box, and hopefully we'll find the box that we need to think outside of soon.
I don't think you want to create a Hollywood in the high desert, or even a new Hollywood, because even Hollywood, if they went back and did it again, would do it a completely different way. I mean, I think what you need is a new business model. And you have that opportunity here to create a new business model. You have the crew base, you have the funding, you have the facilities, you have the equipment, you have everything to create a different business model, and I think that's really where you want to go. But to build it around profit would be a huge mistake. And we already have that business model of art here. Art's a big business. Art's the biggest business in Santa Fe. Art's what brings the tourists here and everything else, and absolutely you can.
So while the typical model of, let's try to raise a few $1 million to make our movie, really I don't see that happening so much on the independent side here. I do see that there's a lot of collaboration and a lot of resources that get pulled together and people that really come together to make film.
Basically what we need to do in New Mexico is we need to have a distribution point. Whether it's, finding a way to utilize new media or use old media to our advantage. The other thing is we need to have revenue points, whether it's tapping into people who live here, who have the money and want to tell stories like we do, or finding a way to fundraise, through various means, online or however that may work out.
We have an infrastructure, we have a crew base, we have all these things that Hollywood would look to, international films will look to. The most important thing is that the community here it's a less competitive environment. It's a more cooperative environment.
I think the New Mexico film industry is going to continue to grow. There's a lot of people who have been trained here. That's been the beauty of the film crew training programs, and people just getting experience, not just working behind the camera, but in front of it, creating their own films as well as working on big television shows and feature films, is that they've all greatly improved. And I think that's just going to cause the business in New Mexico to expand, create more opportunity for everybody.
I think that's what we're trying to do. When we reinvented the film business here, I mean, our film business had left us in 1997. When I wrote the original incentive bill, which was the loan program, our film business had gone to Canada. It had gone away. And we reinvented the film business here between 1997 and 2002. It's 10 years down the road. It's time we reinvent it again. Let's look at the other models and see where they're broke, and not try to import, the Hollywood model or the Eastern European model or anybody else's model. We need to invent a new model here. And we can do that. We've done it once. We can do it again.
We're a small state in population, and we need to all be pulling for the same thing,
People can work together. There's going to be competition on certain levels, of course, but that's same about every little car repair shop that's out there. And my car repair guy the other day, so busy, he kept my car for 5 days.
Well, my dream would be to see the entertainment industry here cater more to the local people who want to make their own films. I don't know that that's going to happen. I mean, when you say, where do you see it? I don't have a crystal ball. But I would say if things continued the way they are, I'm sure the economy will be good. And for certain people, certain crew members, it will be good. And I'm not sure it's a government thing or a private industry thing, but somewhere along the line, it would be really nice to see some help for people that just want to make a film here and that are from here and that have a good idea. Yeah.
No, I want it all.